You're listening to the Wise Woman Podcast, Episode 1. I'm your host, Alicia Wilfert, founder of Yoke and Abundance, a leadership, life, and creativity coaching business. This podcast is designed to inspire by introducing you to creative women living abundantly. I hope you'll savor Victoria's words of wisdom as much as I have. I'm very excited to introduce you to Victoria Brownlee. I've known Victoria for about 5 or 6 years, since the early days of my yoga studio. She came to a workshop. Since then, she's been a client in my one-on-one coaching as well as my group coaching program in the company of women. I'm certain you'll find many nuggets of wisdom in today's episode, but first, a word from our sponsor. A huge thank you to our inaugural sponsor, Concierge. Concierge is your partner in the unforgettable travel experience. Concierge is on a mission to empower travelers, especially women travelers, to expand diversity awareness and create educated global citizens. You can count on Christy Soper and her team at Concierge to deliver an experience that will inspire with luxury, getaway, and adventure. I've personally worked with Christy and her team with some of my more complex travel plans during the year of the travel. What I love the most is how well Christy could anticipate my travel needs before, during, and after the trip. If you want the best travel experience, Concierge is the best travel partner you could ask for. Now, on to episode 1 of the Yoke and Abundance Wise Woman Podcast. Could you state your name for me, please?
I am Victoria Brownlee.
And Victoria, how old are you, if you don't mind sharing?
33.
33.
The young 33.
The young. Hey, you're only as old as you feel.
Yes.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Yes. I am originally from Asheville, North Carolina. Made my way here to Greensboro to go to school. And being from Asheville, I love nature, love being outdoors. So I brought that here with me. I love to go and find different parks here in Greensboro to explore. I have 2 babies. They aren't really babies, but they'll always be my babies.
How old are your children?
8 and 5. And so they are my why. They motivate me and they keep me going. And in my spare time, I love to work out. And personal development, spirituality is a passion. Currently, I work as an instructional coach. And so I support schools with professional development. I travel across the country to do professional development, to lead professional development for teachers. And I also do job embedded coaching. And so that coaching model, that focus on growth, I enjoy. And
who do you coach?
Educators.
Teachers. And you don't just work in North Carolina, right? You work in lots of different school systems, is that right?
I do.
Well, you are my very first Wise Woman Podcast interviewee, so thank you so much. And I thought one of the things that would be super fun for us to do would be to pull an animal spirit card. So with all of my coaching clients, this is something that I do, and you're a coaching client, and so you know that.
Yes, I love those.
Yeah, what has your experience been with them when we've done them in the past?
Just taking in that breath and being able to pick the card. I think that moment to get aligned and get in tune with your spirit. And I've just noticed that once I pick it, it's perfectly aligned with where I am.
That's awesome.
Time. So.
Well, I'm glad you found them useful. I'm just going to shuffle a few times, just like we normally do. I always have this little routine where I seem to shuffle 3 times. So it's kind of like my...
And I always get nervous. I don't know why. What is life going to tell me now?
Okay, so if you could put your hands on the deck and take a couple deep, big breaths in. And when you're ready, just cut the deck with your left hand. And I always say the left hand because that's the one that's closest to your heart. And then flip this guy over.
Okay. Ooh.
So Victoria just pulled a unicorn.
Wow.
And this animal spirit deck, it was written and illustrated by Krantz. And it's set up as there are 5 suits: earth, fire, air, water, and spirit. And the spirit cards are creatures not of this earth.
Ooh.
So they come around when you might be in a situation that's difficult, or you need grace to be surrounding you. And they're there to show you that someone is looking out for you. And the unicorn is really fun. And I love to read what these cards are. So the unicorn, what Kim writes is, she says it's reconnecting to higher wisdom or divinity. It's difficult to see, hear, or think of a unicorn without immediately questioning if it's real. Did they ever exist? Perhaps long ago? The mind answers maybe, or it could be, or no way. This contemplation explains our relationship to divinity and encapsulates our wavering belief in the unicorn. We wonder what divinity is. We wonder where our intuition comes from and if we can really trust it. We think about a higher power and our mind hesitates between yes and no and maybe. Is it male or female? Does it have a name? Or is it just a feeling? The unicorn card appears and wakes us up to curiosity about the higher self and the divine. It's a card of questioning, exploring, or contemplating the inexplicable. The mind's eye knows there is something beyond our day-to-day life, a deeper dimension in our experience. The mind's eye reaches and reaches and reaches out to grasp something more. You are the unicorn, and you have begun your quest for the answers. She also, on the spirit cards, tells us what chakras they correspond to, and the unicorn corresponds to the 6th chakra. She says it's no surprise the subtle essence of the unicorn card resides at the 3rd eye, the exact place from which the unicorn's horn extends. This center is called the Anjana chakra, or command center. The ancient yogis believed it to be responsible for our intellect, intuition, and deepest wisdom. Some say our 2 eyes see the past and present, while this 3rd eye peers into the future.
Wow. See, I said they gives me chills every single time because it completely aligns with what I'm feeling and where I am. Just the thought of what really resonates with me is that I have decided to just surrender and allow all my answers to come to me because I know that they're all within. I constantly say to myself, I am inviting whatever it is to be in my life, and doing that in a fearless way. So that is exactly what you just said.
I love that. I just got goosebumps.
Yes. So just this thought of being fearless and surrendering to whatever it is without worrying about the outcome has been one of my and since I set my goals for the new moon, that was one of my goals that I wrote down in my journals.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
Yes.
That's really exciting. So what's one project that you're excited to be working on right now?
So I have a project at an elementary school where this project, they purchased a large amount of days. And so which is unusual for some of our projects. And so I've been in the school for at least 40 days this year. And it's been phenomenal because I've been able to build relationships with the teachers where today I walked in and one of my teachers, she came to me, she said, I had to ask the CF to make sure I had some time to sit down and talk with you today because I need to get these questions answered. And it comes from their passion in the classroom. So it's just refreshing. I'm excited about that. And then, well, that's the one. I have a few that I'm excited about.
Okay, what's another project that you're excited about?
Okay, I do want to show that. There's another one where we recently collaborate with an author who has written a book about feedback. And so giving students feedback, and her name is Sue Brookhart. And so we've been able to carry her work to a different state. And so I'm excited to launch that project in June.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yes.
What will that launch look like?
So it'll be a 1-day workshop, but I had the opportunity a few days ago to be with the same group of teachers, and so we already just hit it off. They had a workshop. Their first workshop was based on the book, Thanks for the Feedback. And so the idea and the way the workshop and the experience has been laid out is that first they learn how to receive feedback, and then they learn how to give feedback to their students. So I had the opportunity to share that experience with one of the co-founders of ERG, which is Hope Reagan. I had the opportunity to go with her to New Hampshire, and we set in on a workshop about Thanks for the Feedback. And so the person who led that workshop will be at my workshop. So this is a huge collaborative experience that I can foresee this having positive outcomes. So that's why I'm so excited.
And you're collaborating with a lot of women too. So what's your favorite thing about collaborating with women?
What I enjoy is the energy that we bring to the table and the way we understand things from each other, and being able to take and learn and grow from the strengths that we all have. And then when we put those all together, it's like, oh, I didn't know. I never knew. I never thought about that. And so just to give you an example, when I was at this workshop, the presenter, she said, I haven't heard of this book before. So I'm looking forward to coming to your workshop. And here she was leading this one. And I said, and I learned, I hadn't heard of Thanks for the Feedback before this workshop. So it's just that opportunity to collaborate and bring ideas to the table for the common good.
Something that you said really resonated with me just now. You talked about how it's the strengths that you all bring to the table. As someone that's trained in as a positive psychology practitioner, positive psychology is part of it is about focusing on what is right with a person instead of what's wrong with a person, and focusing on the strengths more necessarily than we focus on the weaknesses. So I love that that's what you said, that's the first thing that you thought of when you thought about collaboration, is what strengths you all bring to the table.
Right. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. We're in this together. We don't have to compete. We're in this together.
Have you met Jordan Lisinski of She-Wolf?
Yes, she is amazing.
She is amazing. She's kind of coined a term, co-opetition.
Yes.
Do you know that? Have you heard us talk about this?
I haven't heard of it, but it just, listening, I can visualize and see her saying that. And so that's why I'm laughing right now.
Yeah, it's that we're not necessarily competition. We might be quote unquote competition, but if you come to the table with the idea that you're going to collaborate with one another, that even if you are quote unquote competition, you can be co-opetition, that you can cooperate and learn things from each other, and that's going to make both of you stronger and better and help differentiate yourselves from one another, and it makes the pie bigger for everyone.
Yeah. Yes, and that's exactly what you say at the beginning of every wise woman, when every wise is that we have enough. And you speak about your experience as a yoga instructor and how it initially felt the competition was taking away. There wasn't enough.
Right.
The idea that there's an abundance.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter if you're an instructional coach, I'm an instructional coach, we come to the table, it doesn't matter. There's an abundance of opportunities out there.
Yes.
Love it.
Your mindset is great.
Love it.
So can you tell me about one thing you've done recently that scared you and taken courage, but that you're glad you did?
Yeah, I had to have a difficult conversation. And so after reading Thanks for the Feedback, there is a part in there where it talks about how we receive feedback in difficult conversations. And so you map out the ways to navigate that conversation, and you get clear about how you want your voice to be heard. And so in the difficult conversation that I had to have, I had to be real careful that I didn't use labels so that my voice would be heard. And the reason why that was difficult for me, because one thing that has been difficult for me in the past is just speaking and letting my voice be heard regardless of how it is, because I've been fearful of hurting people's feelings. But to make a long story short, I had this difficult conversation, and all of that fear that I was worrying about, all the outcomes that I visualized, didn't happen. It went great. So
wonderful.
So I think that taught me. I spent a lot of time prior to just outlining, this is what I want to say. I spent a lot of time worrying weeks and weeks before I read this book, because this is a conversation that has been leading up for a few months.
Can I ask, was this a work conversation or a personal conversation?
A personal conversation. It was just a conversation where I had to have with a friend about our daily conversations being negative. And I love her to death, and I wanted to do it in a respectful way to where she felt heard, I felt heard, and we can have this conversation.
That's beautiful. And, I think that a lot of women in our personal relationships, we care so much about what the other person thinks and feels, which is a really great thing. It's wonderful to care for another person. But when it starts impacting our own mindset and it starts impacting us,
yes,
it can be very scary to have that conversation. So can you talk to me a little bit about the strategies that you employed? You said you mapped out the conversation. What did that look like? Can you walk us through that?
Yes. So what happened? I'm a visual person, so I like pencil to paper. And so what I did was I drew 3 squares, and in the middle of the square, I wrote what I wanted to accomplish. And so in that square, I wrote what I want to accomplish. In the square on either side, the first square, what I wrote down were all of the things that happened, okay, the evidence that led me to where I am right here in the middle. And then in the last square, what I wrote down were just statements that I could make, how I was feeling and what I wanted to say. And then I read it several times, and then I went back to it to just rewrite. And as I was reading it, I was making sure I didn't have labels on there. Like, you always speak in a negative tone. I wanted to make sure that I really put out the evidence so that it wasn't personal. It wasn't labels become a direct attack. And so just given the evidence, I just wanted to say, every time we talk, I feel like these are some of the things that we talk about. And these are some of the things and I see that it hasn't changed in 3 months. So where do you want to be with this? And so what I went back, I wanted to pose questions and eliminate some of the labels. And so what ended up happening is going through that process, since this was a topic I was very passionate about, when I wrote the initial conversation, it was negative. And I had labels in there. And so then I also took it a step further, and I recorded myself, because again, this is an area of growth for me. And so I also noticed that in that conversation, and I just did this scenario, I played it out as if I was talking to the person, and I noticed that when I got to some of the places that I was really passionate about, I would lose eye contact, or I would look down, or I would seem fearful. And so that helped me to approach the conversation. So those are the steps that I took.
Wow. I'm so impressed. And the reason why I'm impressed is because you care so much about this person that you it shows in what you're saying that you wanted to approach it in a really thoughtful way. And it sounds to me, I believe you said that some of these tips came from the book, Thanks for the Feedback.
It did.
And is that an educational book? Is that towards your profession education? Or is it a general self-help type of book?
It's a general book, and it was written by Susan, and I can't think of her last name, but it was written by 2 law professors at Harvard. And so what they do is they go around, they actually share it with corporations and businesses, and so it becomes a tool that so I would say it's a book that leaders can use to help guide them through difficult conversations that they may have to have with people that they're giving feedback with.
Deeper question, maybe. I'm curious, what's the work you most want to be doing? Are you doing it? And if not, why not?
That is a deep question. So I am moving along that path. And I think we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and it really helped me to reflect. And it was just, do you see the work that you're doing right now leading up to where you want to be? And I do.
That's fantastic.
I'm in a coaching role. That's where I want to be. And in the future, I see myself working with teachers in the capacity where I just experienced a few days ago, where we're talking about how do you take care of yourself as a professional so that you can take care of the students in your classroom, because I feel like it all goes together. Personal growth, spirituality, identifying core values, being able to articulate that to yourself helps you to be an effective educator, and then supporting learners with that same type of work. So I see myself right now, the coaching that I do is instructional coaching, where I'm really talking about pedagogy, strategies that work in the classroom, which I love that. And with that, I also build relationships, but I also want to move toward that personal growth. How are you taking care of yourself as a professional? Are you able to accept feedback? How are you building relationships with your students in the classroom? Are you helping them with mindfulness practices? Ways to deal with difficulty. And so, in a nutshell, all that said, coming back to the question, I am on that path, and I realize that. And so I just see that this coaching is going to move in that direction.
Neat.
Yes.
And full disclosure, I mean, you are a client of mine,
yes.
And we get to work together in lots of different capacities. You're also a Yoke and Abundance ambassador, and thank you so much for being an ambassador. I know that you've thought about this question because it's one that we've talked about in the coaching process, but in your work, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
I see myself coaching, speaking in front of people, coaching people, and I definitely want to stay in the education realm in some way, shape, or form. Just some of the content shifting, talking more about mindfulness practices, talking more about personal growth, setting goals. So being in the same role that I am in now, but shifting some of the content. That's where I see myself.
Mindfulness is a big part of your life.
Yes.
Can you talk about what role mindfulness has played in your life?
Oh, wow. Well, about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I had my second child, and I was in this place where I was having anxiety attacks, and I mean, they were debilitating anxiety attacks where I had to pull over to the side of the road, and I just couldn't function. And then I went through a separation, and it was just like, again, debilitating anxiety attacks. And so I went on this quest. I said, they wrote me a prescription for some medication, and I went home and I researched that prescription, and the side effects just weren't appealing. And so I did some more research, and I realized that it was suggested to find activities, things that you can do to help cope with some of the anxiety before going to medication, because medication could possibly be a short-term fix. And so some of the practices such as mindfulness have that long-term impact, which I'm not saying anything negative about medication. I'm just saying this was my personal journey and what I wanted for me. And so I knew that what I wanted for myself was a long-term solution. And so I was willing to go through some of the short-term difficulties, which along the way, I was sitting in my room some days and I'm just like, this mindfulness thing is not working.
Because it's it's totally a long-term fix.
Yes. Yeah. And it's still a practice that I have to do daily. And so, but I just eventually got to a place through doing some yoga at the Greensboro downtown yoga, and just doing, I attended a class there where it was based on mindfulness practices and stress reduction. And so that class jump-started this piece, and then I was forced to get over that fear of this not working. And I was told in that class, it doesn't matter what's going through your mind. It's okay. Your thoughts may not stop. And that doesn't mean you have to stop being in that moment or in that practice. It just means you just let the thought go. And so that changed. And I eventually practiced, and I continue to see how it has helped me to deal with those. And I haven't had an attack in about 3 years.
Wow. That's really powerful.
Yes.
And the thing I love so much about meditation, and it's something that with clients I'm always talking about, yes. And more so clients asking me about it than I am bringing it to the table. They proactively say when we do an assessment, mindfulness is something I want to start bringing into my life. What advice would you give someone who's starting on the mindfulness journey in the beginning?
I would say be gentle with yourself and know that it's a practice. And I would say a lifetime practice. Because I think we initially jump into it and we're just like, okay, I went through a guided meditation, or I walked and I sat in the car mindfully, I'm fixed. It's a practice that over time you are training your brain, and so it takes time. And it's going to be something that you're going to practice for a lifetime. And be gentle with yourself, because you may sit there, and I still do it, depending on what's going on in my life. I may sit and I say, okay, I have to start this meditation over. Because I was completely lost during the first round. Let me do the second round.
But it's being compassionate with yourself during that. You know what you just said, so meditation rewires our brain. And so you saying that it takes time, I just had a picture of like a little electrician in your brain crawling around and moving the wires. And that takes time, right?
Yes.
It's not going to happen overnight. Somebody's got to crawl around in there and move the wires.
Yes.
You know, it's not an overnight fix.
And so that little man is moving the wires. And so the time out now, I just say to myself, instead of getting frustrated, I just say to myself, it's okay. Just start this again. Right. And we're going to do the best we can.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just going to decide to start over again. And there are some days where I say, well, I don't have time. It's okay. I did the 10 minutes. It didn't work. And so then what I do is I say, well, throughout my day, I'm going to be more intentional and just really focus in on, I'm going to make sure I wash my dishes mindfully. I'm going to make sure when I get in the car, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. When I'm walking out the door, instead of rushing out the door, I'm going to walk and feel the ground as I walk. And so then I just make it a daily practice with the other activities that I do.
Are you ever in the shower and like you wash your hair and you're like, did I wash my hair?
Yes.
And then I think to myself, well, that was not a very mindful shower, Alicia. And I try to be compassionate with myself, but I think, okay, well, as I'm washing whatever it is I'm washing next, let me be fully present in whatever that is so that I remember.
Yes.
Having a mindful experience. Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story of can I tell you a story?
Yeah,
so
please.
Something recently that happened to me, and it was just like, I was like, oh, I have really rewired my brain. So 2 events happened within 3 days. One day I was in Whole Foods and I lost my wallet, and I had $200 in my wallet. Someone turned in I also had my birth certificate because I just came back from a cruise. So luckily someone turned in the wallet, but they took the $200. Okay. So in the past, that would have been something where that would have took me down this spiral.
Right.
And I could see the death spiral. They took $200. Oh, I can't pay this.
Negativity and lag. Yeah.
Negativity and lag. But what I did was I being mindful, I heard those thoughts. And so I just said, I hope someone is able to pay a bill. And so I just started saying that to myself. And I said, it's okay. I said, I'm glad God, whatever they needed, God, universe, whatever they needed, you just provided it. So I didn't know that I was supposed to be a gift to someone at that time. And I said, thank you, universe, for showing me that I need to give someone this at that time. So I let that go. Wednesday, in my car, driving down the road, made it home. The music was blasting, so I couldn't hear it, but I could see that in my car. I was like, oh, I need to get my car fixed because I keep on going to the side of the road. Well, turning on the music, my tire was flat. So I pulled over to the side of the road, realized that, yes, when I bought this car, they told me I didn't have a spare, but I didn't think about it. Didn't have a spare, had a little thing. Luckily, somebody just magically pulled up behind me. He was a roadside assistance guy. He filled up my tire, and he was like, and this was all in the week that I lost $200. He was like, so go up here and get your new tire. So usually I would be like, well, God, I lost $300 in a day. But being mindful, I pulled up to the place, got a new tire, and I said to myself, thank you that I wasn't in Durham. Thank you for sending the roadside assistance person. The universe is working. And a week later, I received at least 5 days of work, which definitely
took care of that.
Wow. So.
And I think that mindset is a huge portion of that you stayed focused and present on the fact that you knew you'd be provided for.
Yeah.
You trusted that you were going to be provided for. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, if you had the opportunity to go back and tell your high school or your college self something, what you would tell them?
And it may have changed over time, but at this point in time and where I am in my life right now, everything is going to be okay. It's okay. Surrender and let it be. Because it's all going to be okay. I think I spent a lot of my time in high school trying to make things work out of fear. And if I just surrender and trust, it would have been okay. It's all going to be okay. It's life.
It is.
It's beautiful. And whatever it is, it's all going to be okay.
I think that's so true. It's like that quote that worry just robs you of today.
Yes.
It doesn't fix whatever is happening, but it's robbing you of your now.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm wondering if there's any motto or piece of advice that you would want to share with the listeners of this podcast.
Yes. Unfold to every moment. Unfold to every moment and invite whatever it is to come in, because everything you need is right within. It's right within you. There isn't anything out there that you're reaching for. everything that you need is within you. So when you unfold to each moment, and this also comes from some of my mindfulness practice, is that when you unfold to each moment, you're able to hear, you're able to listen, and you're able to create what's already within. So unfold to the moment, invite what it is to happen, and create from within.
I love that. Thank you. I'm also curious, when was a time you felt most wise?
When was a time I felt most wise? For my first son, after I had my son, and being with him as an infant. Ironically, looking back on it now, I couldn't tell at the moment. I felt wise then, because I think God has instilled in us these instincts and this wisdom. And just one example is within being a mother. After you have a child, you worry that you aren't doing, but you are, because that's what we're created to do. And so looking back on it, that was the time, because I was able to listen and hear him and meet his needs. And I didn't even realize that was the moment. But in that moment changed my life. That moment changed my life. I gained a strength as a woman that I didn't know I had. And I always had it. I just didn't know I had it because I brought it out. And I think that was because it takes wisdom. And I think sometimes mothers underestimate themselves because you're getting so flustered. But it takes wisdom to be able to listen to your body, and your body know that it's time for you to feed your child, and being in tune with your child in that way. So that's when I felt wise.
Do you feel like that was a time when you most listened to your intuition?
I do. And I didn't, looking back on it now, I listened to myself. However, I wouldn't, if I was in that moment, I wouldn't say, because I didn't realize I wasn't mindful enough. But there was a moment where, and now that I'm able to see it in hindsight, which if I had been more present, I would have seen it in the moment. But there was a moment where my son, he was laying on his back, and he had acid reflux, and he was choking, and he wasn't making any noise, but he couldn't breathe. And I woke up out of my sleep. He wasn't crying or anything, but something told me to get up and go check on your son. And then and there, I told the doctor, I said, listen, you have to write a note. He needs to go on his stomach. And I was firm in that, and I knew that that's what my child needed.
Right.
And so that, I say all that to say, I felt like that was a moment of listening to my intuition where I didn't even know.
Very cool. What would you tell a woman who's not feeling wise or who is doubting herself? What advice would you give her?
I would give her the advice to sit with it for a moment. Sit with it. Be still. Don't fight anything. Don't try to find any answers. Just sit with it for a moment and then write it all out. Sit with it for a moment. Invite what you want to invite in that space, whether it's love, joy, compassion. Invite whatever you want to in that space to deal with whatever you feel like you need wisdom about, and then just write about it. And that's we've worked with writing in our coaching process, and that has just, I've found that when I get still and write it out without filtering anything, it comes out in that writing.
Yes. I mean, you know how I feel about writing as a tool.
Yes.
I think I think Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, that is like my personal Bible.
Yes.
And I feel like that one of the main tools of that book are the morning pages, which I think you employ. Had you been journaling before our time together?
So not in that way. And it wasn't consistent. It was sporadic. I would journal here and there. It was sporadic. But I became consistent with it since we started working together, and just being able to do it daily, waking up, getting it out, and noticing trends in my thoughts, and just not filtering anything, unfiltered. And so just writing without a filter.
And what does that do for you?
It releases. I feel lighter. Afterwards. And I feel like being able to get it all out, it helps to organize. And it helps to find what it is within. Because sometimes we have these thoughts that linger, and they cloud and they clutter the thoughts, the seeds and the thoughts that we need to have that helps us to be wise. And if we get those thoughts out, where you want to cuss someone out, you get it out in that morning page. You get that clutter out, and then you're able to get out that wisdom piece.
Yes. I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, I find morning pages a way to almost tune into the channel of my intuition.
Yes.
So it's like I've turned the dial, and now I'm locked in, and what's really going on can come out.
Yes.
I'm wondering, on a completely different note, what's your favorite yoga pose?
Child's pose.
What is it about child's pose?
So, first of all, it feels good. And I am not the best at yoga, but that child's pose, it feels good with my body. But the other piece to that is that the grounding, just being close to the ground, being close and having my body close to the ground. I feel like I'm connected with a source that is outside of me. And that's my grounding piece, is being close to the earth. And so I feel this connection that I get up and I'm just like, wow, everything is okay. And I think it's also just like it's child's pose, it's that comfort. And so the universe, God, being our spiritual parents, however, father, mother, whatever you want to call it, being that spiritual guide, it's almost like as a child, I'm like, hold me and hug me, and yes. and it happens. And so it makes me feel good.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to share right now?
I just want to share, live, be who you are, do what you want to do, and do it without fear. Do it without fear and embrace each moment.
And last question, my favorite question, how do you live with abundance?
I live with abundance by being knowledgeable and knowing that every day there's abundance of everything that we have, everything that we need is right here. And just knowing that everything that I need and everything that I have and everything that I want is right there. And through my thoughts and through my words, my actions, and my feelings. And so aligning all of those, I can live an abundant life.
And how did you gain the wisdom to believe that?
Being around people, learning from people, connecting with women, connecting with spirits, reading, listening, meditating, all of these practices that I knew, and just having that search for all these pieces helped me to find that everything's right here that I always had. Bringing all of those pieces together helped me to be where I am today.
I hope you were inspired by Victoria's words of wisdom. If you've enjoyed this podcast, head over to iTunes, rate us, and share this podcast with a friend so that we can keep bringing wise words your way. Check out our website, yokeandabundance.com, for more words of wisdom, creativity tips, and information about my group and individual coaching programs. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Suncierge, and our editor and producer, Ira Sterling at Julia Sound Recordings. Remember, every one of us has wisdom within. Keep sharing your words of wisdom because you never know who you'll inspire.